Hey everyone, this is Steve and I am Engine Post, and today I'm going to show you in a Fusion tutorial how to pull off this effect. This is a 5-part series where we're going to go through everything from creating that portal effect, animating it, tying animations together by using expressions. We're going to discuss how to build the background plates for images and pull focus. We're going to use a third-party tool to do that that's very reasonably priced, as well as how to sync audio. So again, this is a 5-part series. I hope you enjoy it. Let's get started. Okay, welcome back to part 2 of our little portal. And to continue, there's a few things we want to do. We want to be able to animate these things, these two clouds, but we want to kind of animate them together. And there's a couple different ways to do that. We could scale them, for example, together. We could affect their color, but we could change the way they're moving. So maybe what we want to do is we really want to animate them together, right? And we want to kind of keep them together. So there's a couple different ways to do this. To animate, if we like the shape right now and we want to animate it together, one trick might be, since they're both coming into this merge, we could put a transform after it, right? Transform. And then, again, this is going over to camera 2. With that transform, if I mess with size, it'll scale it at the middle, right? And that's kind of cool. But there's different effects you sometimes care about when you're doing that. Like, we really want it to not just scale. We want to animate it moving out. So I don't know that we want to transform it with that. So let's click that and say delete. So what we really want to do is we really want to move this box, this rectangle, in and out. But when we do that, you know, we want it to move together with the red thing, the red lightning. We want that to kind of move along with it. So the answer there is kind of fun. What we'll do is we'll select everything on the screen up to the merge and including it. And then we're going to hit Control G to group those things together. So here's now our new group, and I'm going to hit F2 on that group and name this portal. So here's our portal, basically, right? If we right click, we can expand that group with a Control E or just by clicking Expand Group. So we still have the group here, but there's a clever thing we can do on this. So one thing I noticed beforehand is with this rectangle, I can resize it down to about, I can reposition it, is what I mean to say. Let me get this in view correctly here. I can reposition it down to about, let me scroll out a little ways, holding Control, I hate using the middle mouse wheel. If I drag this down, it disappears at about, what is 0.002? Whoops, that's not right. It's about negative 0.11 or negative 0.12, or we could say 2 to be safe, right? So if we said negative 0.2, it's good enough the screen at the low value. If we grow it from the middle and have it blast outward, it's totally off the screen at a max of like 1, maybe just, it's a straight up 1, right? Now that's still on the screen a little, but it might actually be off the edges. So if we said 1.1, that's probably a good bet. And so again, I don't mean to affect that. I'm going to take this back down again to where we had it before. So the answer there that's kind of cool is we can right click on the portal of this tool we have here, and we can sort of mess with the controls. There's something here called edit controls, right? So if I click that and I'm on the user page, I can say I want to add a new control. I'm going to call that new control something like portal size. Let's make it one word though. So we'll just say size, right? Because we know it's a portal. So here it is, size. It's going to be a number, and it's not going to be an integer. I want it to be from the range. We said negative 0.2 to 1.1. That's what we said would be the range of that control. So that means with this selected, if I go to the user tab, we should start seeing that control out here. And I'm not right now for some reason. Let's go check that out again. I might have forgotten to hit add. So again, if I say on the user page, just be sure, don't have it. If I say size up here, does it add it yet? No, it doesn't. So what we want to do is, I forgot a few things. We want to say edit controls. We're going to write size up here in the name, right? Hit tab. Put a -0.2 to a 1.1, and I'm going to say slider control. And now it's going to put that on the screen for us. Be sure animatable is selected. That's important. And then we'll hit OK. And now we get this new control here. So let's go back and edit that real quick because I forgot to actually name it beyond its control name. So if I select size, I can say size. Be sure it has a label of size. So let's just check and be sure. It's of type number. It's not an integer. It's a slider. We should be okay. Okay, yep. Now, so we have the word size. The default value is 0, but notice it can go to -0.2 and all the way up to 1.1. That's what we want. But what we want is we want it to control that cloud, right? So we go to the cloud inside this, and now we can say that if we right click on the height, because that's what we're going to mess with, or rather the center, we want to mess with the Y value. So to do that, we need to create an expression. And we really want to take this second value. So here's X and then here's Y, right? And we're going to say that the Y value is equal to size and hit enter. So now when I'm out on this control and I animate it, it's going to move what's inside. And that's pretty much how we want it to work, right? And so the next question is, how do we get the red to move with it? Well, it's pretty simple. What we do is we have to figure out what that offset is. So if I leave it right here at 0.263, and that looks right to me, and I go to the rectangle over the portal lightning, now we'll notice that its value is 0.35. So we want to figure out what the difference is between 0.23 and 0.35. That's an addition of math, right? Hey Google, what is 0.35 minus 0.23?
The answer is approximately minus 0.317.
0.317. So Google, what is 0.2? Hey Google, what is 0.35 minus 0.23?
The answer is 0.12.
So 0.12 is what we want. So what we do here is we do the same thing with the red one. We're going to right click and say we want to deal with expression on the center of the red mask, which we've selected. And in that second value where it says 0.35, we're going to say, I already forgot the number. Does somebody else out there remember it? Google, what is 0.35 minus 0.23? Hey Google, what is 0.35 minus 0.23?
The answer is approximately minus 0.317.
Hey Google, what is 0.35 minus 0.23?
The answer is 0.12.
So it's 0.12, right? But what we're going to say is size plus 0.12 and hit enter. And goodness, that doesn't work. It didn't like that at all. So we got to figure out how to do some math here, right? So do we say 0.12 plus size, maybe? 0.12 plus size. And that is the answer. It's a little too far though, so let's back that off. Let's say it's 1.11 instead of 0.12. Let's bring it in. Let's say just see what 0.1 does for us. Yeah, that puts it right at the outer edge, a little outside the blue. So what that'll mean now is we said 0.1 plus size. The problem there was that I capitalized the word size and I couldn't find the variable. It needed to be S, capital S, little I, Z, E, because that's what I named that control, right? So now when I take this and animate it, it should move them together. Look at that. And it's just animating the heck out of it. Now the problem is it may be right there, it's going to like sort of explode out. And it's going to be mostly red on the extents. Not a lot of red on the interior there. It's hitting sort of a max interior value by the growing. But either way, we have sort of the effect we want. Notice that line is showing up again way out here. And that's because our mask is probably not big enough. And so let's take a look at our elliptical masks. They're not bad. Should be covering it. It's because of the top and bottom edge. It's not tall enough because it's masking what's inside here. And so what we'll do is we're just going to increase the height of that ellipse so that it covers the full distance of the screen. And now when we animate all the way to the edge, it should stay nice and blurry. It should stay nice and blurry, but it's not for some reason. Well, we're not going to ever animate it that far, but that's something worth investigating. So now at least we have that animation working. The next animation we care about is what's going on in the middle here. And the other thing that's sort of a problem maybe is these masks are really too big. So if I go back to this mask, I want to change the height on this. The cloud is too large. Okay, and then on this, the red is fine. So if I animate again, it's going to adjust a few things, probably more than likely for us. And you'll notice that the blue isn't pushing out enough, right? And so the answer there is the equation again. We have to mess with that equation. So we'll take the rectangle for that blue mask since we've made it a little bit smaller. I don't want it quite that small, so I'm going to make the height a little bigger. And the addition is to get it to go out, what we have to do is we have to add it to the size. So it was 0.1 or something, right, to make it move out just a smidge. 0.1, so we're going to add 0.1. That's too far, so let's try less than 0.1, which half the distance would be 0.05, right? And yeah, that's looking pretty good. Let's maybe go even less. Let's go 0.025, and that will bring it out, but not quite as far. I don't like that, so we're going to go with 0.03. Better. Let's try what 0.04 looks like. I like that. And so now back to animating. We have a good distance here. We can now animate using that little tool there on the side, and everything looks pretty good. But notice that if I actually run the timeline here, nothing's happening. I mean, it's not like we actually have an animation going on. And the animation is also way too long, right? So since we're talking about animations, we're about 12 minutes into our little tutorial here. Let's make this animation 150 frames long at 30 frames a second by default, right? So I'm going to type 150 here and hit enter. That's a little better. Let's play this, and of course, again, it does nothing. It doesn't even begin to know what to do because we're not actually animating anything yet. We're not animating a thing. So what I want to do is first I want to hit proxy here. That's going to speed up and start caching our animations, right? I'm going to go back to the start. What I want is I want the thing to change over time. I want the clouds to change over time. And the way you do that is back on those portal clouds or the lightning clouds, we're going to animate how much they change inside themselves. We talk about the seed value, which kind of changes the starting points of those values, but we want it to change over time. So the way you do that is you mess with the seed rate. So I'm going to change this to, like, let's say 0.1, and let's hit play and see what happens. So that's just the underlying cloud, right? Go back to the start and hit play. And notice that it is changing, but it's very subtle. And we want to be more than subtle. So what we're going to do is go back to the start here. I'm going to change the seed rate to 0.3. Let's see how that looks. That might almost be too much. Let's hit play. Yeah, that's probably too much, right? Let's see what happens after it caches. It'll run nice and fast and fluidly, and it's just way too much. And so let's stop that. And now let's bring it back down to, say, like 0.25. Let's split the difference, and let's do that again. It's going to cache it as it goes fairly well here. I think I like that. It's nothing too crazy. but it's definitely changing. Okay, it still looks a little noisy, so I want to be sure that if I have the TV here, that I don't have any noise going on. We've displaced that. That's all good. So what else can we animate? Well, let's animate the lightning, right? So let's go back to the lightning, and let's play with its seed. It needs to change too. The other one was 0.25. Let's try the same thing, 0.25. And let's back this up to the start and hit play. Does it look like that little red lightning is out there leading the blue cloud? And I think it does. I think it looks pretty cool. I like it. And so the next question is, how do we, what else could we do to make it look even cooler? And the answer might be in the TV tool. Let's take a look at that. So in the TV tool, we have that ability to offset, right? And the offset actually has a rotational effect, as you can see there. Right now it's not rotating everything because there's something weird with the mask. So let's take a look at that mask, be sure it's set up the way we want it to. I'm looking over here now. If I go back to TV and I fiddle with that, I'm going to go over up to the coordinate. I'm going to go all the way to the color curve on the left monitor here. And what happens if I mess with the horizontal value? Just part of it is moving. Why would that be? Let's go back to the ellipse and think about this. Could we do something else to rotate it? Yeah, we could rotate it with the angle of that transform. That would be one way of working. Why don't we do that? So let's hit undo there, and I want to say from the start to the end of this, maybe it needs to well, let's first make some choices before we animate anything else, because that first seething value, that happens programmatically throughout, but anything we keyframe now, we can't really set a constant programmatic rotation in these tools. So what we're going to do to pull that off is I'm going to say that this thing appears at frame 60 and it disappears again at frame 120. Okay, so it's going to kind of poof into view from 60 to 120. So basically I'm going to keyframe the angle at 60, and then I'm going to go out here to 120, and let's see how much I have to turn this so that it turns once all the way around. So I'm going to watch this cloudy point here. I want it to go clockwise, so I'm going to pull it this way. And you know, I don't have to be exact, it's just an approximation. So now let's see how that looks. When it hits 30, it should start rotating that cloud. And maybe that's even too fast, right? Maybe it should be like half of that. But I can live with it. Let's see where it is for now. Let's now fiddle with the lightning and do the same thing. So if I go to around frame 60 or 60 exactly, I'm going to keyframe the transform angle, and I'm going to take that out to 120, which is right here. You could also type it in, and I'm going to do the same thing, except yeah, no, I'm going to rotate. So I'm watching this, I'm going to rotate that maybe even a little faster, just barely. So let's see how that looks. So again, it's going to be invisible until it hits 60, and then the thing is turning. And it actually looks like the blue is turning faster than the red. I don't like that. I want the red to turn faster than the blue. And so the way to do that is, again, I go to 120. That's our end angle. And keep dragging to the left a little bit more. Maybe about there. Let's see how that looks. So if I play that, hopefully it looks like the red rotates faster. Right now they look like they're rotating nearly at the exact same speed. So I'm going to go to 120 again. And I'm going to keep dragging the angle to the left. I'm going to go that much more. Big chunk of a move more. And let's see what happens. It should rotate faster. but they look like they're kind of rotating uniformly to me. It looks like it's rotating at the same time, but that's okay. Again, I'm not too worried about it. It's a good effect. So then the next question is, how do we have this thing grow, right? We need it to grow if we're working on this crazy animation. So the answer to that is we need to go to 30. And I think we've done all the animation we want to do inside of here. The only other thing we could do would be to make it size. Like we could do a really complicated set of algorithms to like alter other parameters, but I think I'm satisfied with it. So I'm going to hit Shift E here, and that'll, or is it Control E? Yeah, to collapse that portal group. With it selected over here, if I expand out portal, I see size. So what I want to do is I want it to be tiny and then get big, right? So at 30, I'm going to keyframe, actually I'm going to go to the start, and that's where we'll be keyframing the size. And the size will be 0. Or negative 0.2. That's no portal at all. And then when we hit 30, I want to have it start appearing, and I'm gonna have it sort of actually stay at frame 29. I need to set a keyframe here, right click, say set keyframe, so that it will stay from 0, or that negative 0.2 to negative 0.2 all the way to frame 29. At frame 30, however, it's okay to have it at negative 0.2, but when we get to 120, actually, I meant, that's all wrong, isn't it? Let's actually delete this path. And so we go down here, there should be an option to remove some keyframes. So we're going to do that. 29 and 30, we'll remove that keyframe. It's going to stay at negative 0.2 until it hits 60. That's really where we said it should start animating. So that means at 59 I still need to set a keyframe here. So I'm going to set a keyframe there. At 60 I want another, that's when it starts to animate it on its own. So 59 is the last frame where it'll stay invisible. Then it'll start animating, because when I hit frame 120, that's where I want to have decided where its end size is. So we'll make the end size somewhere around there. And then that's it. So let's see how that looks. Let's start it over. And we should see a nice little portal grow out of the center there. I like that. I could probably rotate faster, but at this point, I kind of like how it looks. Yeah, there it is, rotating faster, actually. Okay, the next thing we might do is mess with it's appearing and disappearing, right? And that does require either going back and affecting these colors, if we want it to fade in some other way, in some other meaningful way, and then fade out again without size being the factor. And so we can put it inside the portal itself, or we could probably affect transparency from the outside. So let's think about this. So one way to affect it from the outside would probably be to animate the blend mode, for example. So like, in other words, we know it's starting to appear here, and that's cool. Appearing like that at the start is totally fine. But when we hit 120, we actually want the thing to have faded out. And so a way to do that would be to go into the merge here, and we could just fade the whole thing out, right? So to do that, we would go to that little target control. And then again, if I change the blend, it's going to knock it out of the foreground, right? And so what I would do is I would say, here's the end game. I want it to start changing at 110. That's when I want it to start blending out. And then at 120, I'm going to totally have knocked it off the planet there. Okay, so let's take a look at how that looks. It should basically fade in, sort of, and then fade out. And that's okay, that works for me. It might have been a little fast, so a quick way to change that would just be to say we just altered the blend of the merge. So let's go to the spline. Let's go find that merge. Here it is. Here's the blend. Let's select it. And here's the fade out from 110 to 120. What I'm going to do is just click on that. I also want it to be more gradual as it fades out. So I'm going to select both of these dots, and I'm going to hit S on the keyboard. But that's not enough for me. I want it to still go faster. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit, hitting the plus sign, scrolling to the left, and keep hitting that plus sign. There we go. I'm going to move this all the way to 115, and I'm going to do that by clicking it and just using, whoops, it's selected both, so let's just select that one, and then use the arrow key. So now we only have like 5 frames of fade out. So let's see how that looks. Go back to flow from the spline, back it up to the start, and hit play. It should appear, and then it should fade out. And that was way too fast. We want it to fade out more gradually, don't we, really? I think. Let's look at it one more time. Yeah, let's have it fade out more gradually. So again, back to the spline. We already have it selected. Let's just be sure we have this point. I think I'll have it back to 100. So from 100 to 120, it'll fade out. Let's see how that looks. I like that much better. Okay, that works for me. So I'm going to save my work. If you haven't, I would. Save as. It should auto save now in this tool. I'm going to call this portal number 4 because I've done this a couple times now. And I think that's pretty much all the animation we need to see that thing happen. So next we're going to talk about how to kind of composite in the background. I hope this has been useful. If you've enjoyed it, we've gone over quite a few things here about how to deal with color and how to tie animations together using expressions and how to group things together and create custom controls. So it's a lot of fun. Hope to see you in the next tutorial. Remember to like and subscribe if you're enjoying these. Know that they're a part of a series if you missed the earlier ones. There's only one other earlier one. And then next up, we're going to, like I said, talk about how to include a background plate from 2D animations. So let's take a look at that, but have a good one. Until then.